One bit of applause. Got one friend.
Welcome, John. Please tell
Thanks,
us what is going on after the triple bottom line.
I don't know. Good afternoon, everyone. Guten Tag. I'm going to talk very briefly in a moment about why we decided the triple bottom line needed a refresh. So I said earlier on, it's not a complete burial, and it's hopefully not going to be a Frankenstein's monster when it suddenly comes out of the hole. But I think we've got to challenge all of our ideas, because clearly what we're doing is nice to have, necessary condition of some sort of system change, but not driving change yet at the scale and pace that we need. So that's all.
So there is hope, and as there is hope, and as we, at the same moment, we are going to bury the triple bottom line, something new will evolve. I would like to ask René to come on stage, and he's already here. Welcome, René. He will help us also to find the solution for the future. Welcome, René.
Thank you.
And as it is so important what John has given us the last years with all his ideas, we would like to ask you now to take your 9 minutes to present us your new ideas. John, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Fritz. Thanks very much indeed. So this is a joke. Nobody's going to save the world even in 90 years. But I was given the choice, do I speak for 7 or 10 minutes? So I picked 9. A couple of months ago, I was in Shanghai on the 27th floor of a skyscraper looking down on the river. And I was reading a report, and the report basically was saying that that city, at 2 degrees of global warming, would see half its population, so currently 24 million people, but growing, 11.6 million people and their homes underwater. We talk fairly easily about 2 degrees of warming, but the consequences are profound. And at 4 degrees, which people are beginning to say that we have no option but to go to, 22.4 million people and their homes go underwater out of 24 million. The next morning, I met a scientist from the Chinese government, and I said, yesterday I came into the city and I saw more construction work than I've seen almost in my entire life. And yet I'm reading this report that says that you're building Atlantis. You're going to be underwater by 2100 or sometime thereabouts. What's going on? And she said, we know that. We put that report together. We see the challenges, but we have no option but to build at the rate that we're currently going. So we live in a crazy world. And that is what drove me in the direction that I'm just about to talk about. And you've all seen charts like this. People tell us that climate change, we've been here before, it's circular, and so on. Oh, no, it isn't. I mean, the scale of what is coming at us, again, is outside the experience of any living species for hundreds of thousands of years. And so increasingly, I find myself using a term which I used to hate, which is wicked problems. I first heard it at the Ford Motor Company in the year 2000. And I thought, what a desperately bad piece of language. But increasingly, I'm feeling that we do indeed, in the sustainability space and in the human space, now face a series of wicked problems. So they're incredibly complicated, very hard to define, but everyone is unique. They're linked to, everything links to everything else. So you try and change one thing, and other things change around, and not necessarily in the way that you would want. And for politicians, really problematically, very hard to claim success, partly because it happens on quite a long timescale. But I'm also attracted increasingly to talk about super wicked challenges. And super wicked challenges, as many of you will know, things like climate change, which almost seem to actively resist our attempts to solve them. They're in addition characterized by a number of other characteristics. Time's running out, no central authority. We have the United Nations, but there is no central authority to speak of. Those seeking to solve the problem, and that is all of us, are also in the process of causing it, and current policies don't do what they should be doing. And we've got all sorts of examples around the world now of wicked challenges. Plastics in the ocean, space debris, antibiotic resistance, You look at the way in which cities are turning into machines to create chronic disease, and particularly diabetes. Even companies like Novo Nordisk, which are trying to treat diabetes around the world, are now really seriously, almost existentially concerned about the scale of that problem. And then you have these little simple problems like Facebook undermining democracy. You start to see these social media platforms that we've created for ourselves having a quite unintended consequence. Mark Zuckerberg didn't set out to wreck the United States, but who knows, that may be the way in which some of these technologies take us. So many of you will have seen, and I just throw up the front cover of the book, Salim Ismail's book. If you haven't read it, it's been out a number of years, recommend it incredibly highly. This diagram comes roughly from that team's work. And I think it's very often hard to gauge exponential challenges when they start to happen. And that's true of problems as they start to take us down, and it's equally true of solutions as they start, hopefully, to take us up. And the question that is in my mind increasingly, and I've spent 40 years now working with business, with CEOs and so on, top teams in business, is whether the human brain is actually fit for purpose in what's coming. We're creating a bunch of different systemic problems around the world, which is beyond, or are beyond, our capacity as a species really to properly address. So one of the things I've been doing, almost in a sense of desperation, is going to see people like Google's DeepMind, a number of the artificial intelligence companies around the world, just to say, what are you doing? And how does that cross-apply to some of the challenges that we increasingly see in the world? The interesting thing is a growing proportion of them are not only interested in the challenges and opportunities, but working into that space. A couple of final slides. Many of you will have read the white paper that Generation Investment Management and their foundation put out last year. I won't read out the text, but I think the text very nicely sums up where we are in all of this, and the nature and scale of what's beginning to happen all around us. And one of the reasons I'm here is I want to test some of the thoughts that we're in the process of having with you all and your networks. As I travel around Silicon Valley, and I've done that quite a lot in recent years, I ask them one question. Have you ever heard of Thomas Midgley Jr.? Only one person that I've ever spoken to in Silicon Valley says yes. That was the chief artificial intelligence architect at Hewlett-Packard. And he said, yes, I've heard it, heard the name, but he got the name wrong. And I said, where did you hear of it? And he said, I read one of your blogs. So no reason why these people should perhaps have heard of Tom Midgley. But in the 1920s and 1930s, he accumulated over 100 patents. Brilliant man. And the three nano stories I tell about his career. Firstly, he invented leaded gasoline. Thank you very much. Brilliant anti-knock technology, but poisoned the nervous systems of millions of young people around the world. Second, freons. So he came up with an entire class of chlorofluorocarbons, blew a hole in the stratospheric ozone layer. Tom Midgley has been described as the single organism in Earth's history that has done most damage to the planet. So we should know about him. And then, so he's a patron saint in a way of unintended consequences, negative unintended consequences. And we have all of these different technologies now coming at us. And the people who are programming them, designing them, deploying them, and so on, basically are clueless about many of the issues that we would like them to be paying attention to. Doesn't mean that they're not bright, doesn't mean that they're not smart and all the rest of it, but they really haven't thought this through in the way that I think they should have done. And that is why, in June, in the Harvard Business Review, we announced a recall after 24 years, going on 25, of the triple bottom line, not because it isn't continuing to do good work, but we all need a whack to the side of the head. So I'm happy to talk about that in the conversation. Any thoughts on that? Oh, just a note of gratitude. A number of big companies that have been doing really interesting work in this space have come in to back the project. So that's it from me. And who's next? René, perhaps, or right. Thank you. Are you going to leave?
John, thank you very much for these ideas. And now we know he doesn't want to continue all alone, to rethink the future. He wants all of you to think together with him what the future is all about. And I start with René to tell us his ideas, what the future is going to bring concerning the problems and solutions of sustainability.
First
The floor is
message,
yours.
I'm a little bit younger, so I only brought 2 slides, not 9. And when we talked to each other, I found out when you started your thinking, 1974, I was born, so that's also a difference.
No
And
relationship.
But you saw the slide. We're going to speed up.
I thought, I have only 2, so I can talk
that's-
slower.
That's why.
And of course, I knew your theory, and I also very much like that you're challenging yourself. Why? Because in my courses, we also talk about the triple bottom line, but I thought it was from the beginning on flawed. So I never really understood what kind of solutions this triple bottom line has to our problems. Because the problem really is, and I can show it you, that we have a trade-off thinking between profit and sustainability. And a lot of people live well by prolonging this trade-off. We as management professors can always say, okay, there's a trade-off. You can be either profitable or sustainable. Of course, as a business school or manager, you always go for the profit. Very easy, you have your financial controlling for that. And the others, let them be the good time. They are off the records anyway. And the other side, the business ethicists, lived also very well. They could say, oh, it's about sustainability, it's the primate of ethics. And we are the good guys. Even if we don't make profit, doesn't care. We are the good guys, yeah. And of course, you were trying to bring it together, like many others did, like Porter with a shared value. You tried to bring the triple bottom line, the 3 pillars together. And of course, I don't know your intentions. So maybe your intentions were really good. But how was it received? It was received like 3 pillars, 3 bottom lines. And then again, instead of 2 bottom lines, you now have 3. And still business managers say, okay, there are 3 pillars, but there's still kind of a trade-off. So if I really have to choose, I may be social, make some profit, but the environment, we just don't care about it. Or even worse, we say, okay, there are 3 bottom lines, but we can just go for 1. And that's what they did. So what we really think, and I think we are thinking now in the same line, hopefully, that you really need an integrative concept. It's not about the balancing anymore. It's not so much about the win-win anymore. It's just about the win. It's a little bit like John was, I heard it yesterday for the first time, Wayne Weiser was saying. Yeah? So we really need to go for an integrative approach. And how do we do it? I think the first thing, and that's also something which is not included in the triple bottom line, is that we should stop thinking the present from the past. We have to think of the present from the future. So it's not about input, output maximizing in how many pillars, 3, 4, 5 bottom lines. It doesn't matter. As long as you think in input, output, and from the past, there's no solution to the problems and challenges we have for the future. So it's all about impact. We really need to think of the present from the future. So first of all, we need to have a clear vision where we want to go, what kind of impact, purpose we want to achieve. Then we need to think about how to change the systems, because of course we always are working in a context, and even if we have a triple bottom line, if the context doesn't allow you to somehow achieve your goals, you are stuck in the middle, and that's what's happening to a lot of companies. So the second thing is really how we collectively can change the system. And then, of course, you can start thinking in efficiency categories again. Which kind of output do we need? Which kind of innovative products do we need? And then how much input we have for this. So this is kindly 2 different aspects I was always missing, I have to admit. But of course, normally you should say it first, it was a great achievement to start a sustainability discussion in the first place. Otherwise, we couldn't have synced in this line. So I really thank you again, even if I just was born when we were start thinking, for your contribution to it. But I really think together we should now challenge you. And I also told him that I'm going to challenge him. And he's a very polite British researcher, and he wants to be challenged. So please follow me and challenge Elkington right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. And I think the first big thing and the big lesson we learned, don't believe into your professors. So, whenever they say something like the triple bottom line or CSR or this and that, and we even heard today that CSR is dead, have your own opinion. And what was right yesterday may not be right today. And as my friend Doug Tompkins said, progress is not always stepping forward, because stepping forward now could be a little bit dangerous. So it might even be step 1 or 2 steps back, or going left or right. So I really want to animate you to think what you learn and to be critical and maybe to develop it further. And that's why I'm going to jump down right now and ask you, how can we support John to find new solutions? How can we discuss with René to find new solutions? And how can we maybe change the academic world to find a way to teach young people and to do our work in companies, in politics, to follow the right path? And we have also George Kell here, we have Mr. Pretorius, so they all can bring in their knowledge. They have been working for a long time on this field. We are ready now for discussion. I'm going to jump down to you and to hear, what do you feel now as you hear that the triple bottom line is dead, and what would you propose to do instead?
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Martina Oster. I run a business ethics institute in Austria, and I think what we need for the future is to bring ethical thinking to the young people, to think about their values. That's the most important thing, and then to change their way of thinking. Yeah, I studied also design thinking, and I bring now together to the companies this new way of thinking combined with the values. And I think that's what Professor Schmidpeter said is for me the right direction.
Thank you very much. And you brought in the issue of design thinking, very interesting thing. I'm coming over to you now, and here is the microphone, and the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you. My name is Bonnie Ludis, and I develop sustainable solutions for islands. And I agree with you. I think the triple bottom line is dead. Is it?
It's
the
working.
Sound is a bit weird. Yeah, and I thought about this a lot while I was writing my research, because to me it didn't make sense to have 3 bottom lines when society and economy cannot exist without the environment. So you can have the environment without society or economy. You can maybe even have society without economy, but you can't have anything without the environment. So what I was thinking was that, of course, the focus has to be shifted not just to the environment as a base, which has already been modeled. I think there's a bit of a squeak. Is it okay? Yeah, and yeah, but what I was thinking is that the focus has to shift to creating more environmental value. So if you're focusing on using society and economics to expand the environmental resource base, then you should always have a bigger base to pull from. So I think, in my opinion, that the goal of society and the economy should actually be to improve natural resources so that we can have more to pull from. Yeah.
Can I come back to some of these, or do you want me to sort of store it up like a volcano and erupt all at once?
We like the volcano.
I think it would be great to see you erupting like a volcano, being inspired and being charged by us. So please keep your answers. And there are a lot of, the second, and the third one here.
Just like this. I'm Roland Bardi, and my background is accounting. So when you come up with impact, I see there is the reconciliation to John Elkington, because a bottom line is something which is measurable. And we have impact measuring. There was not many about this in the conference so far, but I think the clue is to reconcile to the other bottom lines, measuring impact which is not easy, but it can be done.
Here's to that.
Thank you. One more to charge or supercharge John and René, and then before they are going to explode, we are waiting for the answers.
Thank you. My name is Samuel Idowu. My view is that the triple bottom line is not dead.
Very good.
And of course, this has been made obvious by the UN Sustainable Development Goal 2030. It has been extended to peace and partnership. In other words, there are not just triple bottom line now, there are 5 bottom lines. Okay? So the people, the planet, the profit, they are still there. And in order to enjoy all this is why we must work collaboratively together as partners. And in addition, there must be peace in our world. That's my contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very important issue. And now, John, it's up to you to answer.
Well, let me erupt, or just say a few
You
things.
can also stand up.
We are
And let me
waiting
just
for the
say-
explosion.
If everyone in the world was Gail Kell, we wouldn't have much of a problem. But everyone in the world is not Gail Kell. And I just think it's just a side note. Really interesting to see somebody who co-founded the Global Compact now going into artificial intelligence supported investment services. That, for me, is a signal of where we all collectively need to go. Let me just back up slightly and just say, when we talk about the triple bottom line, let's remember what it came up in opposition to. So back in the 1980s and early 1990s, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development would talk about eco-efficiency. Brilliant for engineers, wonderful concept, basically about how do you make or save money by doing the right thing, primarily in terms of the environment. The triple bottom line was a challenge in 2 areas. Firstly, it said, you've also got to bring in the social dimension. And incidentally, it's not just about the financial part of all of this, it's also about the economic area, which people tend not to remember or choose to think about. And I find, having given up economics after 1 year in 1968, because economics then seemed to have very little to do with the wider world, I now find I'm coming back into that space 50 years later and thinking, oh my God, I'm going to have to learn about economics. Who are the really interesting thinkers out there? And suddenly, there are a really interesting group of people coming up in that space. Kate Rayworth, Mariana Mazzucato, and these sorts of people. So just remember where we came from. Let me then say something very brief about why I still think this has utility. You mentioned Michael Porter. I love Michael. I worked with him for 9 years within Nestle. But Peter Brabeck, who was at the time the CEO, later chairman of Nestle, put Michael Porter and I into a ring together, in effect, for 18 months to fight it out, to say, is shared value going to replace sustainability, which was Michael's view. And my view was, you can have all the win-win outcomes in the world that you want or you can get to, fantastic. But if you're thinking about the coal industry in the Appalachians, for example, there is absolutely no win-win shared value outcome that's going to suit right the way across the triple bottom line. And in a way, people want to keep, Trump wants to keep the coal industry running for the jobs. We've got to kill the coal industry as fast as we possibly can. At the end of that 18-month battle, I'd love to have a sort of a medal or something for it, but all we got was Nestle said, all right, we're not going to talk about just shared value, we're going to talk about shared value within the concept of wider sustainability. Tiny, tiny advance, but the triple bottom line does remind people that however many win-win outcomes they may get to, there is a much bigger systemic crisis and challenge and opportunity out there. Last thing, if I may, just to remind us all that the triple bottom line, when it launched, was not primarily an accounting framework. It was a system change agenda. And a book that I did very quickly on the heels of the Cannibals with Forks was called The Chrysalis Economy. And the idea is that every so often our economies go into periods where everything melts down, as it does inside the chrysalis. So a caterpillar goes into the chrysalis, everything melts down, and then there's things called imaginal cells, which reassemble the different components into what then becomes the butterfly. We're right smack bang in the heart of that chrysalis moment. So not defending the triple bottom line, just giving a little bit of context.
I think, René, we have been talking today about win-win situations. Maybe you want to add something about
First of
your
all,
way
it did not really convince me because, of course, within your thinking, it's logically and it was the next step, but it not overcome the dualistic worldview which it has, that there is a trade-off. Yeah? So you're still arguing in the trade-off, and Porter is arguing in the trade-off, but on the meta level, if you really see the world as a whole, and we see business as also the whole of the world, and the world is part of the business, then there is no trade-off. And then, of course, the coal industry as such, no matter what, will distinguish be anyway, yeah, because the effects are already there. And of course, there are still people who have this old mindsets. They still hold on the coal industry. There are still investors there. But this is not a problem of the industry or of the investors. It's an industry of our mindset and how we teach the children in school, even at universities. Because if we teach everyone with a more holiness mindset, without this trade-off, everyone knew from within what is doing the right things. You know what I mean? And then maybe the people felt in a comfort zone. Yeah, you gave them a solution, of course, which is good and it's better maybe than the rest. But therefore, we 25 years were in the comfort zone and said, okay, we just need to implement the triple bottom line and everything is fine. And not even this was achieved. But even if we had achieved the triple bottom line to implement it, there's still the problem with the trade-off thinking that people in the end see a disconnect between business society, disconnect between ethics and profitability, and that's how we are taught. And I just want to overcome it. We should not judge so much about other people because we always judge in these black and white categories. And I think this is now time to overcome, and artificial intelligence, as I learned in finance, helps us because all the artificial intelligence already shows us there is no trade-off or contradictory between being profitable and sustainability. So maybe the computers are even more intelligent than us already, and I don't know why we as creative human beings should stick to mental models which are now 1,000 years old, even older than you. And so maybe together, you're still young and fresh, we can develop a new mental model. That would be my goal, which we then can teach in business schools.
So if you say there is no contradiction, prove it.
No, prove the other side.
Well, we had a discussion today. It's not that easy to not harm the environment and make profit.
I explain. It's all the reality is framed in your brain. Yeah, of course. If I frame it as a trade-off, there is a trade-off, and I can prove the trade-off. If I don't frame it as a trade-off, like maybe some Taoistic or Eastern philosophers do, they don't see the trade-off because I cannot steal from somebody something because I'm stealing it from myself because we are the same, you know. It all starts with a differentiation. If we say, okay, there's black, there's white, there's good, there's bad. We already make this trade-off where in a logical idea you don't get out. And this is kind of all of Western thinking, and that's also my next thinking. We should much more bridge Eastern and Western thinking. I don't say this one or the other side is a solution, but he was asked, how can I help him? I would also say we should go to get also some Eastern knowledge in order to challenge us because they have a different perspective on the world.
Okay, I think the volcano is already filled again.
I actually really would love to hear from other people in the room. And just to say, I'm here throughout the day, so would love to have other conversations. But just specifically to this point, I think anyone who believes, the idea of the triple bottom line was never that it should be a trade-off. It was, the original thesis was it was treated as a trade-off.
That's probably.
And my favorite CEO that we've worked with here in Germany is Patrick Thomas at Covestro, IPO'd out of Biomaterial Science. The way he puts the triple bottom line, and in about 18 months he spoke to 1,400 investors and financial analysts around the world, pitching people, planet, and profit. The way he puts it is you've got as a minimum to make progress on two bottom lines and not go backwards on the third. As long as we're talking about that, firstly, we're not talking about trade-offs, but secondly, we're talking about a business proposition which really potentially does take us forward. But let's see what other...
I take this.
I think the triple bottom line helped us a lot, and I think this is worth an applause for John for the last 25 years.
Thank you. Thank you.
And here's the next suggestion or question.
Hi, my name is Hayden Cosm. So the issue that I see with Professor Dr. Schmidpeter's model is that it really applies, and for me, only with new companies, with startups, that from onset on, they have the purpose that we're not going to harm the environment, we're going to have a positive net social impact, and we're going to make profit at the same time. Where I see it being difficult is in established companies saying, okay, going to all your shareholders, all your investments, you go to Morgan Stanley and say, hey, you know what, people plan to profit, as Mr. Elkington said. So I think an aspect where you have this triple bottom line of impact, and that you can show that our trade-offs are less and less, to use, that's not exactly my word of choice, but that it's less and less, and that we're improving. I think that's sort of maybe in our current state, in this chrysalis, the best way forward at this current time.
Thank you.
You want to answer?
No, I did just one thing that was flashing through my mind earlier on, René, to your point. And some of you will have heard of John Fullerton of the Capital Institute in the United States. He used to be a managing director of JP Morgan. Just in the last couple of days, he's released the first of 4 chapters on how the financial system needs to reform. And if you haven't heard of him, or you haven't yet read that work, look up the Capital Institute, John Fullerton. It's the wisest analysis of where we currently are and how we have to change, not just our own hearts and minds, but the financial system, which is a huge challenge. But he actually is, I think, in the process of showing it's actually very possible.
Thank you very much. And here's the next statement.
Hello, my name is Linda. I'm a founder of a nonprofit in Nigeria that is devoted to creating awareness on the danger of child sexual abuse. And I want to actually applaud you for the fact that this theory lasted for 25 years and it has been tested. It's amazing because every week I get an app update. So for yours to have lasted 25 years, awesome. And the fact that you're openly challenging your own theory is also powerful because change is constant. We're evolving every day, and we need to put that in account. For me, in where I am and the organization I have created, is the fact that we do not apply the children in this kind of conversation, and I think they need to be applied. It's not so heavy that they shouldn't be part of this conversation because they are the future. And most times when we go to organizations and we try to let them know that, like, invest in children, because if you do, they're going to be employees. If I go to an organization, I'm like, okay, can you fund a rehabilitation for children who have been sexually abused? They don't see the benefits. They don't see the bottom line, basically. But if you hire adults who have damaged, it's going to cost you more money to harm them, train them, give them emotional intelligence, which is the reigning word right now, mindfulness. It's more expensive to do that, and they're less productive if they come into your space damage. So how do we involve them? I like being in conferences where I see children in that space because they amaze me what they bring into that conversation. And like your quote says, and I actually put it on my Facebook right now, we should start thinking of our present as our future because I want to hire awesome people. How do we apply them? And if there's any way I can work with you on challenging this, I would really appreciate it. Because I was a business graduate, and in my MBA class was when I knew the business world was not for me, because I had so much empathy about the human experience, and I couldn't do bottom line. So I'm back in school now studying psychology with hope that I can get better and understand the human experience better.
Maybe just apply shortly, and that's exactly because you were mentioning children. They don't know about the bottom line. Yeah, they are basically just thinking in a holistic way. They just say the wish is happiness for all people. So there's not a trade-off or anything. They have a clear vision. And why can we just do what is best for the happiness of all people if that's what we need? Yeah. So it's basically a flip of our mindset and really do what we really want. And then, of course, we can talk about efficiency. We can talk about economics. So I'm a business school professor, so I'm not saying that business efficiency is important. But first of all, we need to know what we really want before we talk about any bottom line. Yeah, because it's basically also an external inside and an outside-in perspective. Yeah, we say, okay, what does the world need, and how can I somehow do it? Yeah, or what does an NGO want from me? But it's first of all, we need to know what I, as a human being, want to develop. How do I want to develop? And if I can answer this question, then I think we can apply triple bottom line shared value. Otherwise, we are just following any models, and I think this is not worth our creativity. As you said, the brain is not as a computer, so therefore we will have artificial intelligence. That's the good news. In the future, we don't have to do what the computer can do. We as human beings can, for the first time again, be creative again, like children. And the computer will tell us whether it's efficient or not. And then can we decide. But we, for the first time, really can think, and that's something computers cannot. The computers cannot think of the present from the future. And that's what we now need to learn our young children, at least not unlearn them, that they keep this open mind. And then I think they, not me, not you, maybe the next generation will come up with completely new perspectives. Maybe it's our task now not to develop the world from our perspective, but as you said, let the children and empower the children to do it.
Can I very briefly respond? And that's say thank you for your thank you, firstly. Secondly, children actually have a very developed sense of fairness. They don't know about the bottom line, but by God, they know about what's fair and what's not. And so every so often I go into a school, and you know, really quite young people. I also teach in universities and business schools. But it's incredibly refreshing to see how younger people respond in that sort of way. And some of my colleagues back in the office say, why do you bother? Why? Because the children don't yet know anything that's sensible for what we're doing. My sense is, by God, they do, but they don't express it in the right way. And just a final point, many years ago, we did a book called The Young Green Consumer Guide. Went into international editions around the world, and I still, every year, get audits, green audits from schools in different parts of the world, put together by children. And I have to say, it's one of the most rewarding and energizing and encouraging aspects of what we do. So thank you. I mean, children, we really have to work out. Because in a way, if I was a child now, I would be so fearful or angry. God help us all. So.
Thank you very much, John. And maybe for the next conference, we could have your Kids Council. We did this together with the Dutch princess, and she's doing this Kids Council things together with companies. And it's amazing what the kids are bringing out and in for innovation to the companies. So next time, a Kids Council. And another critic to you, René.
To me again?
Yes, it's already almost over. So to redevelop, to rethink the things that John developed the last 25 years, we would need a little bit more time. Even if we are so fast and have all these robots and artificial intelligence and machines, but for rethinking what to do, we need time. And for that reason, I would like to ask you to bring in your statement and maybe to give me a little sign, should we take another 5 minutes and make the session a little bit longer? Is this okay for you?
5 people.
And who wants to stop in the next 60 seconds? Okay, so then we're going to continue for 5 more minutes. Here is your statement.
Thank you. So I'm trying to make it briefly. René, I have a question for you. Why are you so reluctant to call it trade-offs? While I totally agree with you on a conceptual level, and when we look at it from a holistic point of view, for some people it means trade-offs in specific situations, and I wonder whether we wouldn't be much more successful with implementing things if we actually use the words that people use. Some people will face trade-offs.
So I think everyone can use his own language. For me, trade-offs make me unhappy, because trade-offs always mean you have to sacrifice something for something else. That's the trade-off. And I personally don't like to feel sacrificing because it makes me unhappy. And that's, I think, also an important thing in sustainability. I don't think we need one definition of sustainability. We need basically an understanding for ourselves. And if somebody is fine with the trade-off, as long as he's not unhappy, he should go for the trade-off. I rather see it not as a trade-off, and since I see it this way, it feels much better. And we also work together with companies where we also say it's not so much about what others want from you. First of all, develop your own understanding of sustainability, because by the way, I also think the Global Reporting Initiative is that, yeah? Because you cannot steer a company from outside in. You cannot just do what others are telling you. First of all, a company, a corporation needs to develop a clear understanding what sustainability means for the company, and then set up a management system which fits to this vision. Yeah? And this is basically the inside-out perspective. And following this perspective, I really don't want to convince anyone. I just wanted to give my contribution to John, because he was asking for it. So if he has said the triple bottom line is the best for him, I would also agree. If it's the best for him, he should keep it. But for me, I think it's an integrative approach where you try to avoid as many trade-offs as possible. Best all of them just makes me feel happy. That explains why I'm going this way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, René. And before I hand over the microphone for the last statement, I would like to encourage you and to ask you to fill up your energy again here on the podium, René and John, and get into the role of an activist. So if from tomorrow on you're going to be an activist, okay, what would you really, really do, being a little bit more revolutionary, a little bit starting a real, concrete, tough change? So take the time, reflect about it, and in the meantime, we are going to listen to your statement or question.
Thank you. I'm Wayne Visser from Cambridge University and Antwerp Management School. I think John has always been an activist, actually. But my question really is to you, John. I know that, well, I think you actually left the triple bottom line behind at least 10 years ago. And you've been thinking and working on many other things, including breakthrough capitalism and other things. So I'm wondering where your head's at in terms of which are the models, the mental models and frameworks that you are finding useful now to get to that transformative change.
Thank you, Wayne. And I'm probably a bad parent, although I've been married for 50 years and I've got 2 children who I still talk to. The reason I say that is that having come up with the triple bottom line, after about 10 years of working very intensively into companies like Shell, which did the first ever sustainability triple bottom line report in the world, working into Novo Nordisk in Denmark, which in 2004 recharted itself around the triple bottom line, I started to get a little bit tired of doing that sort of work. And I began to realize that if you're not going to have these trade-offs, if you're going to have a system that actively encourages the right outcomes, then you need to change the legal structure, you need to change all sorts of different incentives. I then fell back in love with the triple bottom line in the late 1990s, early 2000s, when suddenly these social entrepreneurs bubbling up everywhere, and many of them used either a double, which came after the triple bottom line, or a triple bottom line model, so I found myself sucked back into that. And then I sort of fell out of love with it again. That's why I say bad parenting, maybe in my history somewhere. But then I fell back in love when the B-Lab world popped up. And suddenly now you have 2,700 B corporations around the world who are absolutely formally and publicly committed to the triple bottom line. So this damn thing, however many times I fall out of love with it and now try and put a stake through its chest, it comes back. But then in a way that's the strength. It needs to be challenged.
So could this be the second thing that I can pronounce today? A, don't believe into your professors. B, start the company, be an entrepreneur, join the B Corp or the Common Goods or whatever you would recommend to really change the things by being an entrepreneur? Is this a way how to fasten up And René said we have to.
It's funny,
fasten
I
up.
see a book that I did 10 years ago with somebody no longer with us, Pamela Hartigan, who was then at the World Economic Forum, called The Power of Unreasonable People. And something Pamela, who taught, she dealt with social entrepreneurs from around the world. So I can see some of you knew her, extraordinary woman. She always said, it's an injustice if you force people to become entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are born, not made. You can teach people entrepreneurial skills, but if you force people to become entrepreneurs, it's a process of crucifixion. Please don't go there. So yes, we all need to be entrepreneurial. We need to encourage entrepreneurs wherever we can find them. But I just don't think we can all overnight. I've set up 4 companies since 1978. They all still exist, which I'm told is a bad sign. They should have, at least some of them should have failed. But I know how difficult it can be to not just start things, but keep the bloody things going once they're on their feet.
Well, that's a hell lot of work, that's true. Thank you very much, John, and thank you very much that it's not going to be a revolution, but it's an evolution, and evolution needs all of you. And for that reason, thank you for listening to this nice panel discussion, and I would hand over the microphone, or you have the microphone, to have the last word here as the local matador. René.
Last word for this discussion, or should we already finish the discussion? Maybe 1 minute with the entrepreneur, because it's important.
You have the last word now.
I have, I normally not, but okay. Entrepreneurial, I think this is very important, because what do entrepreneurs? They believe in an idea and vision. They recombine resources, and they go in with their own risk, and they do something they really do for purpose normally. Yes, that's a very important thing. And all great businesses, also today, the big companies are started as entrepreneurial companies. There was an entrepreneur. The difficulty is to keep this entrepreneurial spirit. Yeah? The more you grow, the more people you get, maybe which are not entrepreneurial. So entrepreneurship, because that's your question, is actually one of the important answers, that we need more entrepreneurship. Second answer is that we need more tolerance. And I think this is you are very tolerant, so let you be challenged by everyone. I think this is very much important, that we also disrupt the sustainability community, not believing we are the right and the others are the bad boys, but really open the discussion, bring in all different perspectives, except maybe the intolerant people, but maybe even them, because only if we as a pluralistic society finds a solution together, the solution can be implemented. It doesn't make sense if there's a small community, whatever they call themselves, who think they have the solution. Even if it's a solution, it will not help. So what we really need is kind of an entrepreneurial, collective approach to challenge the world problems together. And therefore, we also need the children, but also people like you, John, which did tremendous work in whole your life. I know you're working probably 24 hours if you look also publication. So you really bring in a lot. But we need more Johns, and we need basically every one of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, René.
Thank you very much. These have been brilliant last words. And with these brilliant last words, we heard it's not here are the people on the podium, here are the books, it's every one of you. So I would like to encourage you now to turn left or right, to say hello to the person that is sitting next to you, and to continue for another 60 seconds the discussion. Thank you very much for joining this discussion, and have another few inspiring moments here in this room. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hooray. Thanks, Fritz, very much.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
We have to stop doing CSR. And by we, I mean you. And why I believe so, I will tell in a minute. CSR, for me, is the perfect excuse to not do the challenges, or to not do what we have to do.